Today we're discussing one of my favorite Superman stories of all time inside DC. More so than that, this story is one of the major stories that comic book fans reference whenever it comes to the quintessential stories for referencing the extreme power of the story of Superman. And I know what you were thinking. Wait a minute, Lumos, didn't you already cover that in another video? Well, yeah, but in DC there's never a lack of content whenever it comes to the story of Superman, but this story is kind of different. This story's kind of unique for its placement for Superman. This story is exactly what happens when death comes for Superman of Earth Zero. And if you enjoy the fantastic story of Superman, be sure to like and subscribe down low, or even consider becoming a channel member, as those guys help me make all sorts of new content they'll be dropping in the future. And let's get straight into it, homies. So to start off this story, it starts off as a pretty usual Superman comic. You know, truth, justice, the American way, and all that fun jazz. I mean, Superman is genuinely just being that guy for like 2 entire pages straight. And if you ever wonder why Superman is the main character, it's comics like this that prove why. But that's nothing really new for Superman. He's always out saving the world, right? Superman even feels a debt of gratitude to every single soul on Earth, and he prays that he is worthy of Earth and its people for having taken him in. It's at that moment in time that in an instant, Superman begins to hallucinate something happening to Earth, but whatever he saw was impossible, right? But something was wrong. Superman could feel it. He could tell. He felt dazed, feverish, like a zombie, and it even made him start to tremble whenever it came to his hands at work. He accidentally spills coffee on Lois Lane, who naturally threatens sexual assault on him at work as a result. And so she takes Clark on a walk, most likely for that sexual harassment, telling him to, and I quote, "Don't make me get rough with you, big guy," before they leave. Lol. God, it must be nice to have this man's wife, holy cow. After Superman informs us that you never argue with Lois Lane, and while hanging out with her, he reveals that he may be the symbol of hope to the people of Earth, but weirdly enough, in his own way, Lois is his symbol of hope. More valuable than Smallville or Metropolis, even Earth. And in hindsight, this may also explain why her death makes Injustice Superman fear-driven, and also why he lost all of his humanity once she died. But that's an entirely different story and video for down the way. It's then that suddenly Clark begins to hallucinate that he's on planet Krypton. Kryptonians all around were suddenly dying and asking him why he didn't die. However, Lois stands a few feet away, watching Clark have what appears to be a mental breakdown. Lois had never seen Clark this way, and Clark tells her that he feels like reality itself is dissolving around him. Lois decides they need to find help, and that help comes in the form of Martian Manhunter, one of the most experienced psychics on the entire planet, let alone the universe itself. Superman has known John Jones more years than Superman cares to count, so he trusts him to keep this interaction between them secret. And that's also kind of interesting to think about. That's a lot of years. Martian Manhunter goes on to say that the mind is contained in every atom of your being, and that he is going to probe Superman's mind to find out if the problem is some form of mental affliction. So immediately Martian Manhunter freaks out and falls over, jobbing, just like he left the Justice League animated series. Yo, shoutouts to JobberGodot with that one. As it turns out, Superman happens to have one-tapped Martian Manhunter with his passive mind hack's resistance, to which he says Superman has quite the formidable mind. However, Lois Lane looks to him and says, "Tell me something we don't know," and if he picked up at least anything at all whenever it came to his mind read. Martian Manhunter tells him that whatever's happening is being generated within the unconsciousness of Superman, and only Superman can stop whatever this threat is. However, Lois asks him to stop the psychobabble BS and just tell her what Manhunter mumbled while he was in pain. He mumbled the word Heronmir, the word for the Martian god of death. This scares Superman, and so he calls Perry, his boss, at the Daily Planet and tells him he's going to need some time off, and Lois can definitely tell something is wrong with Superman. Superman then has another conversation with Lois Lane, telling her that something is inside him that's always been there, but he's never known it, kind of like a background music that's been playing throughout his whole life, and now suddenly he can hear it. She asks him if he's scared, and he says no, it's something more than that. It's something deeper, almost like a blind panic. Clark then sees a meteor crashing towards the planet and immediately chases after it. I mean, after all, he's Superman. Flying to where it is and trying to stop it, he realizes this isn't some meteor, this is some sort of vessel, and its design seemed vaguely familiar. He immediately opens it to find a mutated-looking child on the inside. He recognizes the ship as the one he flew to Earth on, and the child inside was already dead. But the baby suddenly comes back to life and claws at him, asking, "Why aren't you dead?" But then suddenly the rocket was gone and Superman was somewhere else. Superman begins to panic. He knows these stories. He did crash land to Earth, but he thrived here. He didn't die. But what if he didn't? What if all of his experiences so far have just been a dream? No, this couldn't be a dream. It had to be some kind of hallucination that he wouldn't give into. He can't give into whatever this is, even if it starts to use the voices of Kryptonians against him. Not real, not real, not real, Superman says to convince himself. What does it want? Why me? It's not my fault I survived Krypton when Krypton didn't. However, Lois Lane stands nearby watching Superman erratically act, flying around, hallucinating very clearly. Superman finds himself back in his hallucination on top of the Daily Planet, falling like a shooting star because he no longer deserves to live. He grabs the edge of the Daily Planet and is almost about to fall to his death. But why should he be afraid of that? He's Superman. In fact, nothing in all the universes can harm him besides. And as he thinks about that, the entire globe above him, the Daily Planet itself, turns into a giant ball of kryptonite, weakening him further. Superman, in his last moments, wishes he just had the sense to die with Lois this time, unlike when he died against Doomsday. However, just as the globe begins to crush Superman alive, suddenly Lois arrives and confronts him, telling him that he loves her and that she needs him to live. And so he breaks the genjutsu cast upon him and returns home with Lois. And although comforted by Lois Lane, Superman asks her, out of all the people, why did I live? Why me? Lois tells him that what happened with Krypton was going to happen no matter what, and nothing in the universe could keep them apart. She tells him an entire planet died, but how many times have you saved this one from that misfortune? Superman may have died before and returned, but that's not a curse, it's grace. And just as her kind words fade, so does Lois Lane, as she begins to die inside of his arms. Slowly but surely, and now with enough trolling out of the way, the big bad finally arrives around Superman, claiming his time has finally arrived, the time of Superman's death. So who exactly is this strange, abstract figure? This is Death. He ordains death and has placed all of Metropolis under a stasis genjutsu so he can deal with Superman. This dude throws Supes through a wall, to which Death here says life itself is simply an extended hallucination, an unfolding dream that we drift through that's malleable to death. Death takes on its best impression of an alien from Aliens vs. Predators and throws Superman through multiple panels. I mean, look at this. The Death God tells him that no one has purpose or meaning, and that's the greatest lie of all inside of reality. But the truth of the world is that everyone fumbles their entire life just to wind up in a grave, and Superman will be no different. As he pushes Superman down into its deathbed, the Death God continues its attempts to doom or pill Superman to death. And there, in his own grave of mind hacks, some form of fear manipulation begins to stir, as Superman begins to doubt himself as the Death God continues to assault his mind. We then suddenly jump to the year 2050, where we continue the story of Superman after the death of Lois Lane some 50 years down the road. Here he fights some new cybernetic Lex Luthor, who monologues dark thoughts to Superman and says that he's okay killing him now that Lois is gone because he never killed him out of respect for her. As he bathes Superman with kryptonite radiation, Superman almost caves into this version of Lex. He is dying. But Superman doesn't care. It's better than living without Lois, right? No, Superman thinks to himself before breaking out of Lex Luthor's cybernetic form. He couldn't give up. He's the hope of this world. Giving up would be surrendering to grief and death. It would be a betrayal of everyone who puts their faith in Superman. He can't have that resting on his soul. A betrayal of all those people. And most of all, Lois. That's something he could never do. And so he breaks free of the mind hacks by choosing life, and he wakes up in his bed right next to Lois Lane. Still slightly panicked, they decide to take a short getaway to Smallville to avoid everything happening. Superman was too dangerous in Metropolis. Like me, it appears that Pa Kent actually forgets everything, because whenever they roll up on Ma and Pa Kent, they surprise Pa Kent, and he believes he's missed his birthday or an anniversary or some significant event, but he hadn't. Clark does all of his father's chores in one panel before his father could finish his sentence, and so they could all enjoy dinner together. There's a few people in existence that Superman cherishes more than his Ma and Pa Kent. However, after dinner, Ma clearly knows something is wrong with Clark, and Lois tells him that it's hard for Clark to realize some things just can't be fixed. Pa tells Superman that Lois is right, and that it really was Grace that brought him to Earth, and everyone is thankful that he's here. But Superman tells his father, his adopted father, that he'd never considered the fact that he was going to outlive everyone he loves, everyone on this planet. It made him feel like a little boy who was scared of death for the first time. He turns to his father after saying this and finds his father dead. Everything his father dreamed of, strived for, gone. The ashes blown away and become that evil-looking creature once more. And the entity of death tells him that everything dies. The birds, the grass, the earth, everything. And Superman will now feel death's touch and know truth, no death. And so it touches Superman's head, causing him a violent outburst of pain. This being is the representation of Superman's death, just like it is all beings that exist, and it wants Superman to die, as each man has a personal shadow made in his image, reflected by their souls that walk with you from the cradle to the grave. All beings die. It's just one natural cycle to this death god. But Superman is special. Without Superman, worlds dissolve, universes perish. Despite all this, Superman pushes against the death god, something that frustrates it even further. However, Superman asks it, "What do you want from me?" He says, as he retains his original form as Superman, finally pushing back, and the death god demands his death. Suddenly, Superman realizes he is standing there with Pa Kent still, and they decide to go back to get some blueberry pie. But unfortunately, Supes has lost his appetite. Superman finds himself still unsure whether this is an actual death god or whether this is just genuinely his fear of outliving everyone in existence. And in the next few weeks, Superman tries even harder to deny the Reaper, to stand taller as ever as humanity's symbol of hope, and so he saves many people as he possibly can to demonstrate that. However, he feels on the periphery of his vision, the edges of his mind, the death god. It was still watching him, laughing at him. Despite this, Superman still makes time for everyone and everything. Most notably, he finds himself approaching a woman in a car in the middle of the night. And that's where our story is going to end today, because we're going to separate this into two separate videos, and I hope you guys are excited. And please congratulate Fizz My Jace for helping me out with this content. He sponsored it, and it was pretty god tier. Loving the story so far and the review. And if you want to be like him, consider liking and subscribing. It's gonna make for some banger content, in all honesty. And hey, you never know what you'll really find. So let me know what you guys thought about this action, and we're gonna catch you next time with a part 2 on this video, hopefully dropping next week. So I hope you guys are jacked. We'll catch you next time, Lanterns. Later.
You'll join my list of dead after I tear you in half. And I laughed at the thought of them controlling me. I'm the ultimate dragon that spawned everything. I resist and defy.